Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our virtual meeting. At this time, I'll call the meeting to order, and I'll do a roll call in alphabetical order. And just councillors, just say present or here when I call your name. Councillor Bagu.
Present again.
Councillor Beauregard.
Present.
Councillor Bodner.
Here.
Councillor Bruno.
Present.
Councillor Danch.
Here.
Councillor Desmarais.
Here.
Councillor Clayliff.
Here.
Councillor Wells.
Here.
Thank you. Well, I don't know what will happen now. We've got some difficult days ahead, but it really doesn't matter with me now because I've been to the mountaintop and I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we, as people, will get to the promised land. Martin Luther King Jr. in his last speech. Tonight, we stand united as a council and as a community denouncing unequivocally racism and discrimination. We know that in Canada, we have our own issues of discrimination based upon skin color, ancestry, language, sexual orientation, or the religion we practice. We, as a society, need to always do better. We, as a society, must stand together with our brothers and sisters in peaceful protest to show our message of anti-racism, anti-hate, and the right to justice for all. Over the last few weeks, I was proud to raise our new age-friendly flag for Seniors Month and our Pride flag honoring Pride Month and our LGBTQ community. Over the last weekend, we witnessed 2 marches in Niagara that saw thousands of people gather peacefully and show support against racism and discrimination. As a member of Regional Council, as well as Niagara's Police Services Board, I was proud of how Canadians can show their support in such a peaceful manner. I would like to thank Chief Brian McCullough for his comment, and I quote, "I think it is important that we are here with the community, listening to the community, and showing our support and solidarity." As I opened with a quote from Dr. King, tonight, we as a council will get to the promised land and do whatever we can to eliminate racism and discrimination for all. Again, good evening and welcome to our 3rd virtual council meeting. I'm here in the council chambers with our CAO, Scott Louie, Clerk Amber Lapointe, Deputy Clerk Charlotte Madden, and a member of the WeeStreem team, who are live streaming the meeting for us. I would like to welcome our 8 city councillors and various city directors who are each attending from home. City Hall and almost all of our facilities remain closed to the public. Staff have been working with members of our Emergency Operations Center on recovery plans for a safe and gradual reopening once we get the go-ahead from the Province of Ontario and our Emergency Operations Center determines that it is safe to open our facilities to staff and members of the public. In the meantime, we will continue to find new ways to deliver services for you. We ask for your patience while we work together for a safe and gradual return of our services. Activities that have remained open during this phase 1 is our marina reopened to existing customers, our tennis and pickleball courts have reopened, the Elm Street leash-free dog park is open with some upgrades there, our library opened for curbside pickup, the Algoport skate park and BMX park is open. Our beaches continue to be open for passive use, meaning you can walk on the beach but not sit on the beach. Parks remain open for passive use, which includes shoreline fishing, including H.H. Knoll Lakeview Park, bringing a chair or blanket to relax in our parks, kicking a ball, playing catch, flying a kite, and other such activities with members of your own household, use of our basketball and soccer nets with members of your own household at community parks, but these do exclude Valley Health and Wellness Center, TA Land and Sports Complex. Individual activities such as yoga or exercising, provided not in groups or a class. We are working on a plan to reopen the farmers market. We will keep you advised as this moves forward. On June 2nd, the provincial government extended its emergency orders to June 30th. As such, we must still abide by restrictions limiting groups to no more than 5 people. Anyone taking advantage of these spaces are to follow the best practices as outlined by Niagara Region Public Health to limit the spread of COVID-19 in our community. These include frequent washing, sanitizing of hands, physical separation, avoid touching of shared surfaces, and staying home if displaying symptoms or having been in contact with cases of the virus. Organized sports are still restricted on municipal fields, given their necessity for gathering in groups. At this time, park and outdoor amenities such as playground equipment, benches, outdoor fitness equipment, municipal beaches, washroom facilities, and the spray pad will remain closed, although our staff is working very hard to open these as soon as they can. Bylaw enforcement will continue to enforce gatherings larger than 5 people, dogs off leash, and anyone using closed park amenities. In order to support our local businesses with curbside deliveries, we have installed 15-minute curbside pickup zones temporarily in our downtown core for residents and visitors to use. And these are going very well. I've spoken to a number of downtown businesses, and they do appreciate what we have done for them in order for them to get their orders out their doors. And since Main Street has no on-street parking, curbside pickup locations have been created in parking lots along Main Street. Please watch for these signs when parking and be mindful they are there to help our local businesses. Residents and visitors interested in supporting local businesses are encouraged to visit https://resilient.portcolborne.ca/ to learn which Port Colborne businesses are open and how they are adapting their services. Port Colborne businesses are also encouraged to visit the website to add their business and service offerings. Niagara Region Public Health continues to provide COVID-19 statistics as they relate to each municipality. They can be viewed on the Niagara Region website at their COVID-19 link. Statistics for Port Colborne remain very low, with no active cases as of this past Friday, but we need to remain focused on proper precautions. And we've been celebrating here in June. We have faced a lot of uncertainty in the past months, and June has brought us several reasons to celebrate. June is Recreation and Parks Month. With the warmer weather here, the city is encouraging residents to enjoy some much-needed activity by getting outside to enjoy the current amenities that are open in Port Colborne. In celebration of Recreation and Parks Month, the City of Port Colborne Parks and Recreation Division will be providing the community with a new opportunity each week throughout the month of June, encouraging residents to participate. Check out our website for this week's challenge and a chance to win a Participate prize pack. June is Pride Month, and the City of Port Colborne participated in a virtual flag raising this year to celebrate with Pride Niagara and all residents of the Niagara region. We are proud to be part of Team Pride Niagara. June is also Seniors Month. The City of Port Colborne has a large seniors population, and we thank you for being part of our community. Before closing, this afternoon the province of Ontario and our Premier Doug Ford released the Stage 2 opening breakdown across Ontario. Although our area, Niagara Region, is not included in the first run out of Phase 2, we hope that we will be added sooner rather than later. I can understand why Premier Ford and his government is doing it this way. With the proximity of Niagara to the GTA, Hamilton, Oakville, Mississauga, and Toronto, we want to make sure that the hot spots in the Toronto area, it's so easy for them to come down, visit the great aspects that we have here in Niagara and our tourism destinations. I believe it's their thought that once Toronto numbers start to drop, they can open it up. I again, totally agree with this. Other parts of the province where there have no cases or very few cases can start to open and help those businesses. But what we don't want to see here, especially in Niagara, is we're sitting back here in September, October, locked up in our homes again because of a second wave that may go through. So again, we do appreciate everyone's patience in this. One good thing though, in addition to Stage 2 reopening, the province also announced some easing of restrictions effective this Friday for the entire province. Gatherings of up to 10 persons, which has increased from 5, will now be permitted. Places of worship will be able to reopen with no more than 30% capacity and physical distancing measures. Dr. Hergy said, overall, this is good news for Niagara. The province has created a pathway for local business and services to reopen and not have to wait for the GTA to better control COVID-19. but the province is also being careful to consider the potential for people in more heavily affected areas to bring infection to Niagara. With that, I end my statement. And again, our number one priority is the health and safety of our citizens here in Port Colborne as we begin a safe and gradual reopening of services and business activities. Again, please stay safe. Thank you. Members of council, any questions for the mayor's report? Councillor Bruno.
Thank you, Worship. I was happy to hear your statement this evening, and as council knows, we've been asked by some citizens about what Port Colborne can do, and I think it's positive that you've read that out, and there can be a proclamation. But I thought of an idea that perhaps, at least since this time back on council, I got familiar with, and that is these modules that have been sent out to staff. I think we've all had the one on violence in the workplace, sexual harassment. I think there were some other ones. And I'm just wondering, either to you, Mayor, or to the CAO, if there may be one on diversity, and if that could be something we could all use, or members of staff, particular customer service people, but for that matter, all staff. I don't know if that would be a 221 budget item, but I'd like to at least put it out there for discussion, or to ask you or Mr. Louie if something like that could be arranged, or come back with some answers.
Thank you, Councillor Bruno. And this afternoon, with my meeting with senior staff prior to this meeting, we did talk about that. So I'll have CAO Louie speak to this issue. Thank you.
Through your worship to council, that's a good question. We do have a training provider that provides videos in an online environment for one-on-one training. We also do bring in trainers from time to time to do training in a group session. And the third thing that we have, which is more community-based rather than staff-based, is the Let's Talk series that takes place in the library. We've had sessions on poverty and homelessness so far, and that program will continue when the library is back open to the public. In terms of staff only, I would suggest ensuring that, I think it's a great idea. I'm more than willing to take it on and make sure that all of our staff get the training. For now, I'd like to see from HR staff if that's available in the package that we already have from our service provider. And if not, I'm not opposed to bringing in a trainer and doing some town hall sessions in the workplace where we can train groups at a time and make sure that we have training on diversity, ethnic diversity, and inclusiveness or inclusion as we go about our work practices in our different facilities. So I'll take it back to staff, and I'll make sure that it's something that we bring in either when City Hall facilities are open and we can gather again, or in an online environment, or in the budget for 2021. It's a great idea.
Thank you, Mr. Louie. Councillor Bruno, any further questions?
Nope, that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other councillors with a question? Great, thank you. Now we'll move on to our regional councillor, Councillor Butters.
Okay, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, wonderful, because I was having some technical difficulties. Councillor Danch, don't be shaking your head. I saw that. Great to be here. Thank you, Mayor Steele, for inviting me in. Last Thursday, there was a special meeting of council, and with your permission and indulgence, I would like to read the statement from Regional Chair Bradley that we heard last Thursday. First, our thoughts are with the friends and family of George Floyd. Much has been reported about this incident over the past days, and it can become easy to lose sight of the individual at the core of this case. It is important to remember that Mr. Floyd was a real person with the same hopes and dreams and concerns that each of us have. Second, on behalf of the Niagara region, I want to offer a full and unequivocal condemnation of racism and discrimination, regardless of what form it takes, whether it is overt or systemic. There is no place for this type of behavior in our region, province, or country. This council, I know, rejects all forms of exclusion and intolerance. As we can all recognize, we are not immune to the effects of racism in Canada. Racialized Canadians face discrimination based on the color of their skin, their ancestry, the language they speak, and the religion they practice. The incident in Minneapolis serves as a wake-up call to all of us to strive to do better. As elected officials, we have a responsibility to take lessons away from this unfortunate situation and take steps to build a region that works for everyone. We were elected to make our community a better place for everyone, regardless of their race, and I am confident we will do so. Third, I want to highlight the steps this council has taken to ensure Niagara Region is as inclusive as possible. Under this council's leadership, Niagara Region has been actively pursuing membership in the Coalition of Inclusive Municipalities. Our affiliation with this group will assist us as we advance policies that promote social inclusion, eradicate all forms of racism, and promote human rights and diversity. This term of council also approved the resources to create a staff position responsible for overseeing inclusion and diversity at Niagara Region. While onboarding this position was put on hold during COVID-19, I am looking forward to the resource being brought online and making meaningful contributions to our work. While we acknowledge these are just two incremental steps, they are setting the groundwork for this term of council to continue to make progress on our mission of creating an inclusive Niagara. With it being June, on behalf of the council, I want to acknowledge that it is both Seniors and Pride Month across Ontario. Niagara Region is proudly flying the new age-friendly flag and the Pride flag in the International Plaza and will do so for the remainder of the month. We support our seniors and our LGBTQ community in Niagara, and I encourage you to visit the Age-Friendly Niagara and Pride Niagara websites to learn more about the events they have planned to celebrate the month. And I think his comments certainly reflected how we all feel there, and were eloquent, and just I was so appreciative that he spoke these words. So the other part of this special meeting had to do with the Canada Summer Games and the region taking over project management of the build. So I think that was a good decision, and it will help us better control the money aspect of this. And I think that's all I really have. Dr. Hergy did send us out a note today regarding why the Niagara Region's kind of not proceeding into phase 2. His comments to us were that our proximity to the GTA in Hamilton, our proximity to New York State, and we did have a bump in our numbers due to an outbreak on a farm in St. Catharines several days ago. Today there was 2 new cases, and our number is up to, I think, 717. So it's so important for us to continue social distancing and hand washing, wearing a mask if you're in a situation where social distancing, physical distancing may not be possible. Our numbers are still consistent in Port Colborne, and that's good. And with that, I will turn it back to the mayor. And if you have any questions, I'd be glad to follow up. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Butters. Council, any questions to the councillor? Seeing none? Barb, as always, thank you.
Thanks, Mayor Steele.
We're moving on to introduction of addendum items. Madam Clerk, are there any addendum items this evening?
There is one addendum item. Item 2 on the agenda, which is Report 2020-55, Community and Economic Development Report regarding physician recruitment, will be removed from this agenda at the request of staff.
Okay, thank you. For confirmation of the agenda, I have a mover, Councillor Desmarais, and a seconder, Councillor Beauregard. Does any councillor have any questions with regards to the agenda this evening? Seeing none, all in favor, please raise your hand. All opposed? That's carried unanimously. Disclosures of interest. The following councillors have declared a conflict of interest. Councillor Beauregard has declared a conflict of interest on items 1, 6, and 7, as well as bylaw number 6789/38/20. And Councillor Bodnar has declared a conflict of interest on bylaw number 6789/38/20. Do any other councillors have any conflicts this evening? Thank you. Adoption of minutes. We have the regular meeting of Council 13-20 held on May the 25th, 2020. I have a mover, Councillor Bruno, a seconder, Councillor Danch. Does anyone have a question on the minutes of May 25th? Seeing none, please raise your hand. All in favor? Thank you. That's carried. Determination of items requiring separate discussion. So far I have items 1, 3, 6, and 7. Any other items at this time, councillors? Councillor Danch.
Can we have a look at number 4, please?
Okay, Councillor, I'll get you to move that when I bring it up, and I'll get a seconder from there on. Councillor Bodnar.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Number 5, and I'd like to speak on 4 also. Thank you.
Yeah, that's fine. Item 5. And again, Councillor, when that item comes up, I'll have you move it, and I'll look for a seconder. Any other items, Council? Seeing none, we'll have approval of items not requiring separate discussion. I have a mover, Councillor Wells, seconder, Councillor Bodnar. All those in favor, please raise their hand. Thank you, that's unanimous. Consideration of items requiring separate discussion. We will begin with item number 1, Community and Economic Development Department Parks and Recreation Division Report 2020-47. Subject: proposed agreements at Nickel Beach, Splashtown in Niagara, Inflatable Water Park, and Big Pappy's Food and Shake Shack. My movers are Councillor Wells and Councillor Desmarais. Now, before I move through this, Council, just to let everybody know this evening, just so there's no confusion, I will have the mover speak first. I will have the seconder speak second. And as I gather everybody's hand off off my picture here, which may be different than yours, I will take that down, and that's the order of speaking. So we just want to make sure everybody's knows what's going on that part of it. So I'll start with Councillor Wells with questions.
Thank you, Your Honor, or Your Worship. I have some questions regarding this. The first one was these would go to Ashley, I would believe. There were a number of RFPs that went out. Can you tell me how many RFPs actually were sent out?
Ashley?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and good evening, Council. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Wells, there was actually one RFP that was issued by the city. It was in January earlier this year, and it closed in February. And it was seeking proposals for the operation of commercial activities at Nickel Beach, and that included food and beverage services, water recreation programming, beach rentals, sports and recreation opportunities, and the like. So there was one RFP that was issued by the city.
Councillor Wells?
Thank you, Ashley. And continuing with that, one RFP was issued, but to how many parties did the RFP go to?
Well, we received 4 proposals. The manager of Parks and Recreation is also participating in this meeting. I'm not aware that we actually directly solicited interest from anyone, meaning that we directly sent the RFP to any one party, but rather it was published publicly, and that's how we received the 4 proposals that were submitted.
Councillor Wells?
Thank you, Ashley.
Okay. Councillor Desmarais?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Ashley. Ashley, I did send an email earlier today asking a couple of questions on this item. I received some feedback from the community wanting to know just how much space would be taken up on the beach for each of these endeavors, the Shake Shack and the Splash Town. So I asked if we could have a map, some kind of a footprint, showing us how much beach would be used and how much would be left free and open to the public. That's really what their concern was. Will that change the fee structure? Can they still walk on for free? Are their cars still allowed to drive on for a fee? Those were the questions that were forwarded to me and that I sent an email to you about. I didn't receive a reply, so I would ask you to address those now, please.
Ashley?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you to Councillor Desmarais. I did send a response later this evening, but I'm happy to speak to it for the public benefit as well. Staff have prepared some site plans that outline the location of each of the operations, I'll call it, and I'd be happy to share that as well with the rest of council. In terms of Big Pappy's, there's a certain portion of the beach that's outlined and approved for vendor operation. And even though the map that I sent you this evening or earlier this evening outlines a rather large area, the operation itself, we're looking at one vendor, is going to take up approximately a 10 by 20 foot, if that, space on the beach. So it's relatively small compared to the depiction that I sent to you earlier today, which was prepared to host multiple vendors. With regard to the inflatable water park, the majority of that will be in the water area. With a small kiosk located on the beach itself. To speak to the items with regard to fee structures, we're not anticipating at this time any type of change to the operation to the beach, whether it's fees or being able to drive onto the beach. So I want to make that very clear that this proposal and the report before you this evening does not contemplate that at this time. And I should say, sorry, if you don't mind me continuing on that thought.
Yeah, go ahead.
There's one other, thank you, Mr. Mayor, I apologize. The one other piece that I would like to highlight for council tonight is that staff have been working on issuing an RFP that will contemplate the preparation of a beach master plan. And this master plan is supported by our recently approved Parks and Recreation master plan as well. And it looks at a number of important things, mainly including bringing additional amenities to the beach. And I think many of us recognize that the popularity of Nickel Beach has increased significantly over the last several years as we start to see an influx and a peak of visitors outside of Niagara region. But even, despite that even, there is a need for looking at improving our washroom access, providing additional beach amenities to the beachgoers so that we can properly serve the needs of the patrons as well. And that's what this report really is about.
Councillor Desmarais?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. That's just what I needed to know. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Bruno?
Thank you, Worship. Ashley and Nicole, thanks for this initiative. I think the way in which you're handling it with respect to having outside entities bring that in, I think is admirable rather than us trying to do and manage more things internally. I did have a couple of questions. I was, thankfully, in Councillor Wells's questions, some of them were answered today by you. Things like insurance coverage and some of those things in the agreement. I am concerned that, so for example, on the watercraft water playground floatables and the proponent that was selected, I think, am I correct, and admittedly had not done that yet, but certainly their name and what they do across Niagara is pretty well known. Is that correct?
Ashley?
Yes, thank you. And through you, Mr. Mayor, that's correct, yes.
One of the major concerns I had with this proposal, certainly I would have liked to have seen the agreement, and I'm hoping that before long we would be able to see that. It's it's a bit putting the horse before the cart, but I understand the need to move forward and at least give a heads up to those that were successful. I would say that the most obvious thing that concerns me greatly is the length of term for this particular agreement, particularly the first time out. So I understand that it's to be for 4 years. Is that correct?
Ashley?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's correct.
I'm very concerned that that's a giant leap of faith on on the watercraft company that hasn't done it. I'm concerned, and the devil's in the details, as they say in the agreement. But to have a first time go of this, notwithstanding some capital expense that would be inferred, particularly on the water park playground, I'm very concerned that 4 years as a first go could lock us into something that may not work, or that if we're not happy with it. Now, you can build in a lot of non-performance clauses and assignability and transfer, and where we can step in. But I dare say I haven't seen many first-time agreements be 4 years. So I certainly would like to see that down to 2 or 3. I'm happy to revisit it partway through that 2 or 3 years so that they're not brought right down to the wire. I think that would be unfair of us to treat a concessionaire or a lessee that way. But I can't support 4 years. I might as well be blunt about it, not on a first time go. And lastly, I'm just wondering if on things like those details, how soon do you think we will see a draft of the lease agreement?
Ashley?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, staff are in the process of working with the city's solicitor at the moment to finalize the details of those agreements. We're hoping to have them done in the near future, and as soon as they are done, certainly it's something that we can bring back to council if council has the desire to review those before they are signed. And if you don't mind, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to address the comments about the councilor's concerns on the term. I think one of the components here is that the proponent will be making a significant investment to the community and has himself a business plan. And I think part of this is that we want to ensure that we honor that plan and that he's able to achieve it with a significant financial investment, meaning the infrastructure that's required to be installed for the inflatable water park itself. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Ashley. Councilor Bruno?
Just on that, I happened to see what was done in Welland with vigorous debate on bringing someone in to do that. And I think it's going to be on a larger scale. They had 4 bidders there. And so for their first go around, and that's not to say you have to copy them, but their first go around was a 3-year with a mid view as to an extension. So whilst I understand the capital investment, I think that there's unless we're going to be into bonding or we have specific break clauses. So, I think it would be derelict on our duties not to see the agreement. We saw the agreement with at Roselawn, and I thought it was, as I mentioned that time, it was extremely well done. And there were additions and modifications done to that I think strengthened it for both parties. So whilst I'm for the proposal in principle, until I see the agreement or look at a shorter term, I won't be able to support this. So I don't know, Ashley, if you can speak to whether that could be part of the discussions. I think there could be something done there. I mean, if you want to go 4 years and you have a bunch of clauses in there that protect the city or allow the city to, for non-performance, get out of that, I'm fine. And that's not, I should say, to disparage this company or any company. It's just a matter of, I think, what we should be doing for the safety of that contract, or if there is a non-performance. So again, forward in principle, but would want to see the details before proceeding. So I don't know, Mr. Mayor, through you or the CAO or Ashley, if this can be broken down into two parts where it's ratified when we see the agreement. But if I'm signing a blank check, to coin a phrase, not that it is a check where it's dollars out of our pocket, but I wouldn't want to enter into that agreement without seeing it.
CAO?
So through your worship to council, I don't know if this answers the question effectively or not, but many of the contracts that the city enters into, especially leases of buildings or land leases and so on, contain some kind of clause to end the contract with notice. So if the 4-year term, to the point of the 4-year term, we often could do 6 months notice or 3 months notice that would allow the municipality to execute a notification period to end the contract prior to the full term without penalty. We'd likely also be allowing the proponent, the lessee in this case, the same latitude. So their 4 years might end up being 2 years if after 18 months they give us 6 months notice they'd like to end that. Now, in terms of the second half of your point about ratifying today or ratifying at some future date, I guess, you know, the recommendation that's before you is in fact I moved my agenda out of the way, to authorize staff to negotiate an agreement with the directors, I guess, nod of approval, or if she wants to come back on mic to tell us what the plan, if the directors inferring that today's approval is an approval to bring back a final contract to council for them to see, then there's really no harm in approving, giving staff direction today. My expectation is that council will have a final kick at the can, so to speak, that will include the actual written agreement, unless I'm misreading the director's intent with the recommendation.
Ashley?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's correct. This evening, we're looking for council to give us the go-ahead to continue our communication with each of the proponents. Essentially, your support in principle is what we're looking for tonight. And we will certainly bring back the agreements for council authorization and approval by bylaw, at which time council, should they see fit, could make an amendment to the terms as well.
So Ashley, prior to coming back to council, if once that contract is brought forward through your staff and our legal team, maybe it's best to email it to all of council to have a perusal of it so that we can give our comments at that time. So in reality, when it does come to us, it's what we want to see. Obviously, at any time, somebody can make an amendment to anything, but moving into that, if we can have primarily Councillor Bruno's issues resolved, that the contract that we pass here is the one that this council wants to move forward with. So getting that template out in the draft contract to council can help us move this a lot faster. Although we know it probably won't get done this year as far as them moving in, but we can be prepared and ready for 2021 at the beach. Is that all right, Councillor Bruno?
I'm good with that, Your Worship. Thank you, Ashley. Thank you, Mr. CAO.
Okay, any further questions on this item? Councillor Bodnar?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wonder if we just might make this a standard feature when something comes to council, that if it involves a number of years, that in the actual report, you know, it will say that they'll be looking at a way for the city to either get out, or like the CAO said, it's always that the proponent can also get out. But if it's upfront in the initial ask, I think then, everyone would be comfortable probably with going to the next step.
Thank you, Councillor. Any further questions? Just one question through Ashley. Is there any cost in getting into these agreements with these two organizations to the city?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No, there's no cost to the city. In fact, each of these agreements represent a revenue generation opportunity for the city. There's a seasonal base fee clause in each of the draft agreements, and then we're also looking at a revenue generation or a revenue sharing component as well. So no, there's no cost to the city.
Okay, great, thank you. Seeing no further questions, all those in favor, please raise your hand. And that is unanimous. Thank you, Council. We'll now move to item 3. Community and Economic Development Department Parks and Recreation Division Report 2020-68, subject H.H. Knoll Lakeview Park Icebox Food Concession and Miniature Golf Facility. Our mover is Councillor Danch. Our seconder is Councillor Bruno. I'll start with Councillor Danch.
Howdy, all. Hey, Ashley, a couple questions as far as the proposal and whatnot. That building's been down there a long time, and we know it got hit hard with the 2 storms in November and that. With the demolition and stuff that's proposed, and we know this COVID thing's going on, what type of timing do you figure that you can get a vendor in there once we get things cleaned up? And I know it's all COVID based, but is it a short term and you're going to be able to, provide something to the people that go down there? Let's face it, it's a desired place to go to in the community for sure. I just wonder if you had some answers there.
Ashley?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Danch. Yes, certainly. This is another project that we would have been moving forward with on, outside of COVID-19, and certainly COVID-19 has an impact on this project like so many others. Right now, in order to, we're looking at a fair amount of, once we get the go-ahead from council, providing that we do, certainly there's going to be some time in demolition of the facility and the adjacent mini park or mini golf course. And then, of course, securing and making sure that the site is suitable for hosting food trucks. We do have some proponents interested and have expressed an interest to staff already that are local, which is very exciting. I think they would love to start immediately. It's just a matter of us being able to host them on the site. There is the opportunity for us to take a look at whether we could find an adjacent area in the parking lot that may be able to host a food truck. But we're probably looking at beyond this summer season, I would imagine.
Councillor?
Yeah, and it's unfortunate, because that park of ours is second to none. And you talk about Lakeside Park, and somebody wrote a song about that, but our H.H. Knoll Park is the finest. So I hope it works out. A couple people have said things to me, and I hope we have a good proposal on a possible building. I always thought that the suggested replacement cost was higher than it needed to be, but I hope it works out and we get something down there for the people, because we all certainly deserve it, that's for sure. Thank you, Ashley.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Bruno?
Thank you, Your Worship. Brilliant idea. Bravo. Love the report. Had a couple folks call me. One about 3 to Ashley was about the pad and the salvageability about it. I figured if it was like in the old walking in there, even though there was tile, there may be a number of cracks on it. I think they were just thinking more from a base for food trucks or for savings. I'm wondering if you could, for starters, clear up the issue. Is the pad beyond salvaging or repair?
Ashley?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. At this point in time, we have identified removal of the pad, but in cooperation with facilities who are really the experts in terms of, building maintenance and things like that, we will work to see if there is any possibility of salvaging any piece of the concrete slab that that the facility is currently now based on. And certainly that would probably decrease some of our demolition costs as well. I apologize that I don't have more information about the actual condition of the pad at this moment for you.
That's fine. Other question I had for you, I don't know if, will there be the retention of utilities? I mean, if we've all been to a food truck fair or food truck setup, they're very much self-contained. But I didn't know if there will be the provisions of outlets for power or water where they can get potable water. Or I'm not sure of all the amenities you might do, but I'm just wondering if that's in the process. And then I just have one more question.
Ashley?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for the question, Councillor Bruno. We are looking at having hydro supplied to the locations to host food trucks. And then as far as the remainder of services, we would be looking at having them self-contained other than that provision.
Great, thank you. And then finally, I'm hoping that there will be diversity. I mean, it's unfortunate. Well, maybe depending on COVID, I know parking is limited down there, but it would be nice to see a few portables food trucks set up down there along the one side of the park onto the pond. Just for the fact is, I think it's a great potentially teaser to what's going to happen. It's a great, I think, point of interest for the press. I think people will be excited about it next year, and it may prompt more people applying because they've seen the demand down there, and I hope it will be great. So I don't know if there's, actually a maximum that whole area could contain next year if we've been able to diagnose that through there. But I wish you well on this project. I think the other brilliance of it is it provides variety, and it's another building we don't have to maintain, and we can put our resources elsewhere. So great job, and I don't know if you can answer that part on what you think the capacity might be there for the number of food trucks. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Ashley?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And thank you, Councillor Bruno. We are certainly looking at multiple food vendors. The exact number at this point in time is not known. However, we're looking likely upwards of probably over three, I should say. But the exact, we'll have to take a look at how many, once the site is prepared, how many exactly we can accommodate in that area. And the report does speak to having a shaded seating area as well. Certainly sunshade is something that we're looking at it as a department throughout the various parks, a little area for resting and, having some time to sit and enjoy the food selections from the food trucks in a shaded area as well. So all of that will be subject to a site plan. We'll be working with, our cross-departmentally with the engineering and operations department to really bring this plan to fruition. And as these details come forward, I'd be happy to share them with council.
Thank you, Ashley. I have Councillor Bodner. Any other councillors wish to question on this? Councillor Borgard, okay. Councillor Bodner, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Ashley. I wonder if in the final report you might add how we'll deal with noise possibly created by these vendors. As you know, there was a number of complaints from the condo building that faced dogs, and up front there should be something in there so that that can be dealt with before they even get going, and give us some teeth to deal with it as we move along with it. And I have another question also. I don't even know how we put this into an RFP, but I'd certainly like to see some weighted preference given to local restaurateurs that may have food trucks, or businesses in port that may have food trucks, that have been pretty much devastated by this pandemic. I just think that that they should be given more than a shot at getting into this area. I know diversity is great, but somebody coming in from out of town and scooping, food sales from local businesses, I just wonder whether we can work something like that in. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Ashley?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you to Councillor Bodnar. We can certainly, as the report comes forward with the more fulsome plan on what the site will look like and how many food vendors it will be able to host, we can certainly address the noise concerns in that report. And then as well as the request for preference to local food vendors, that's something that we can also take a look at in preparing that next report for council.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ashley. You're set, Councillor Bodnar?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Councillor Beauregard?
Through your worship to Ashley. It says the projected total estimated cost of the demolition is to be $4,000. Is that, like, how many other estimates did we get? Because that amount seemed kind of low to me.
Ashley?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. At this time, if you don't mind, I'd like to ask the Manager of Parks and Recreation to speak to this question as she has gathered the information about the demolition costs.
Okay, Nicole?
Through you, your worship, to Councillor Beauregard. We only received one quote, and I did too identify that this cost was awful low. So what we have done is we are waiting for your approval to move forward. We have already consulted with the building department to ensure we are meeting all of the protocol to demolish the building, and are also working with the fire department to provide a training opportunity to the community in terms of demolition and buildings for future opportunities for health and safety.
Okay, Councillor?
Yes, thank you. So I guess I'm just not understanding entirely. Is there a way we can make sure that we don't go over that 4,000, or like, if you can add to that? Sorry.
Nicole?
We'll continue to work with the contractor to look for the lowest possible opportunity to demolish the building and meeting health and safety regulations while doing so.
Okay, Councillor?
No, thank you.
Okay. Any further questions? Any comments? Seeing none, all in favor, please raise your hand. Anyone opposed? That's carried unanimously. We go to item 4, Engineering and Operations Department Engineering Division Report 2020-69, subject request for stop sign installation, Stanley Street at Wood Lane. Councillor Danch will move this. Can I get a seconder to this? Councillor Desmarais. Councillor Danch.
Thank you, Your Honor, Your Worship, whatever you want me to call you.
Worship, honor's a judge. I'm not a judge.
Never really looked at one face to face. Well, I have, but anyways, I did get an email from a guy, and I know it's a nice part of town. That's all there is to it. It's at the end of the town. It's at the corner of town, whatever you want to call it. And his concern was the amount of traffic that was really going through that intersection. And I can't think of the word, but we used to have a study that gave us accident reports and different things. And I don't think there's any at this end. And I will say, like, honestly, I generally don't go down to that end of town unless I'm doing a little toot around type of thing. But we passed the stop sign last term, and we did it in one night without a whole lot of thinking, I would say. And I just wonder if we've done that study that was out there. That's basically my question.
Mr. Lee?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Dance. The study has yet to be completed. Staff has actually an RFP out to do a study for the entire city. This particular intersection, what staff has done is based on the existing conditions and the intent of Stanley Street, which is never meant to be a collector road. The intent is to keep it as a local collector, much like it is through its entire length. So this is staff being a bit proactive, if you would, to put the stop sign in now before we get any incidences happening, because there's been a sharp rise in traffic volumes in the short period that subdivision has been open to Clarence Street. So this is simply a reaction to that. That being said, the study that you had mentioned earlier, that is being commissioned this year, and it's going to be doing a number of intersections within the city that have been brought forward as having potential issues.
Councillor Danch?
So if we put the stop sign in place, we're kind of putting the cart in front of the horse. And generally that things that happen don't get taken away later. And let's face it, the last thing I want to see is anybody hurt, an accident, of course, right? I just wonder, should we not maybe have a peek at this before we say, hey, tonight, guys, we're going to put a stop sign up here and someone's going to be happy, someone's not. I just hope we're not jumping the gun on this one.
Mr. Lee?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Danch. Like I said previously, this is just staff being a bit proactive in the equation. To answer your earlier question about it makes it tough to take a stop sign away once one's been installed. That is true to the point. We're actually looking at one of those right now that one of your fellow councillors, Councillor Beauregard, has brought forward specifically with Chippewa and Berkeley, which is one that was brought in and a stop sign was put in a number of years ago. And with the latest traffic studies we've had there, all indications are, and the recommendation will be coming back from staff to council in the near future, that stop sign actually be removed because the traffic volumes have changed, the traffic patterns have changed for the neighborhood, and the counts verify that. So we can take a stop sign out, or council can take a stop sign out if they choose to, and they can put one in. So this is just this is just staff's recommendation to council this evening.
Councillor Danch?
So we're not going to see the boys out there with the PVS and marking gas lines tomorrow and making sure that we don't punch a pipe in the ground where there's something going on. I mean, I don't want to jump the gun. I definitely don't want to see anybody get hurt, but I just hope we're not just jumping the gun on this a little bit.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Danch. I have Councillor Desmarais.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I received an email about this as well, probably from the same person Councillor Danch had spoken with. I ended up getting in my car. I went and I had a look at the intersection and sat there for quite some time, drove around the area, in particular along Clarence Street, which is a very different circumstance, and went back to Stanley Street and looked again. I really couldn't see the need for the stop sign, but at the same time, I wondered, how long has that intersection been active? How many accidents have happened here? Where is the traffic study? Well, Mr. Lee has just answered a few of those things. I checked online the best that I could. I haven't found an incident of an accident there. And I have to wonder how this intersection jumped the queue. I like it that staff is being proactive, but we have other intersections that have been in question for several years. And I'm in particular, Clally Street East and Elizabeth. Where's the traffic study on that? There we have a proven history of accidents, all kinds of issues. And yet that sits untouched. And we're going to put a stop sign in an intersection that hasn't yet proven a need. And again, I don't want to see anyone get hurt either. But I'm just wondering if we really want to go forward with doing this. I would like to see this put off until such time as we have a traffic study in hand and see where the need is. Because as Councillor Beauregard has brought to Mr. Lee, the intersection along Chippewa has been a pain. That's been a thorn in everyone's side since it was put in. It should probably not have happened, but it did. So I think we should look at these things very carefully before we do them. And I was told that over and over again by staff and other councillors about Kalali Street East and Elizabeth. So if we're going to do that, let's do it with this intersection as well. I would ask that we put this off. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I have Councillor Bruno, Bagu, Kalala. Any other councillors wish to speak on this? Councillor Bruno.
Thank you, Worship. You can add me to the list of that same person who sent out the email. I'm pretty sure it's the same person. I did, as Councillor Demery did, I drove down there and parked for a while and assessed the situation. And I ended up seeing one of the neighbors there, and I got out of my vehicle and went over and talked to him. He was a little shocked that it was coming up this fast, and he lives there. Certainly, I think we can say that the person who contacted us, at least in my instance, lives not immediately there, but was not for the stop sign. The thing I noticed there is that, to Mr. Lee's point, I mean, without traffic warrants or a traffic study, I mean, I take on board that the traffic is greatly increased, but it's greatly increased from it being effectively a dead-end street. You know, until they punch through to Lancaster and into that development in phase 2, we've all been down that through the years, and it probably was one of the most quietest ends down there. The thing that does concern me, and I don't know if I am either imagining this or not, but perhaps, I don't know if Mr. Lee would know or the mayor, but certainly one of the things about this new neighborhood is that it has lots of children. It doesn't, from what I've seen so far, it is young families with kids and there are no sidewalks. But I thought I had recalled hearing that Mr. Schultz was, in this case, having money on deposit. I think he came to either council or the Committee of Adjustment, I can't remember which, and that sidewalks would be installed there. Now, that tampers down my reason for, putting it in this fast. So maybe I could ask my first question through you to Mr. Lee or anyone that might be able to answer it. Do you know if that extension of Stanley and Lancaster will have sidewalks?
Mr. Lee?
To you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Bruno. Yes, that extension, as you refer to, will have sidewalks as well as a section from Wood Lane easterly to the park. So that is going in under the budget that council had approved in 2020. And at some point in time, there will most likely be a pedestrian crossing entrance to the park because the sidewalk is on the north side in the design process due to all of the infrastructure that's in the South Boulevard, hydro poles and underground cabling and things of that nature. So the sidewalk that Mr. Schultz is installing, plus the sidewalk that the city is going to be installing that will lead to the park and then hence to the school as well, are both on the north side and they are to be constructed in the near future.
Thank you. The other thing I noticed in the report.
Councillor Bruno, just before you ask your next question.
Sure.
Mr. Lee, can you clarify your answer with regards to the sidewalk being on the north side? I know what you're saying, that all the services are on the south side and the sidewalk would affect more driveways, so it would be more piecemeal along there. That I believe in the development agreement, it does show it on the south side. Has it been moved because of your reasoning to the north side, which, to be quite honest, makes more sense?
To you, Mr. Mayor, and the rest of council, that's correct. Staff has done some initial survey work and investigation of what's on the site. And to put a sidewalk in, as was originally shown on some of the conceptual plans, if you would, they would conflict with all of the street lighting poles and everything else of that nature, plus all of the hydro and cabling are underground in that location. So it's gone to the north side specifically for the reason of no infrastructure interference.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. I think that's a wise decision. Why put in a sidewalk and then a few years later it's all being dug up because of the cabling or hydro or whatever bell. I'm glad you guys did that. So, Councillor Bruno, you had another question.
Yes, in the report, thank you, Mr. Mayor. In the report, it talks about the school, and I can only assume that that's St. Patrick's School. I guess I'm concerned that that is a fair stretch away. I would have thought if it was, Caroline M. Thompson when it was up and running, but St. Pat's is completely over at the other feeder road, right, at Clarence and Hampton and Rosemount. I'm not so sure that I see that as that sizable an issue if you were a student on Lancaster walking to St. Pat's, particularly now that I hear there's a sidewalk that will get me probably at least to Wood Lane or take me across to Clarence, given all of that is going to be sidewalked. So I'm with some of the other, my fellow councilors, thinking this is too early, and I'm not so sure how many neighbors, maybe the ward councilors can elaborate on this, brought this forward. But, the only email I got was opposed. And certainly that's not to say that one email in either direction is a movement. So I'd like to hear more from the ward councilors before voting. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Bagu?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Councilor McLean can help me if I'm wrong here, but this started when we first became councilors in this term. Councilor McLean and I received complaints about the speeding of the street because of construction and that. And basically what the problem is, early in the morning, people are going to work. They're going out of town. They're going down to hit Cement Plant Road. They're coming back around 5 o'clock and 5:30. And the speeding cars in, plus going through the stop signs off of Clarence. And I sat out there myself in my vehicle probably, I think, 8 times. Well, some in the morning, some in the evening around supper time. And there was a lot of traffic there. People were trying to get on that number 3 highway really fast to go to Welland or wherever they're going. And the family on Stanley Street. And basically, I am all for it. The study was supposed to be done last year, according to that Chris Lee. It was never done, never started. And so basically what we're asking for is, let's put the stop sign in. We still want 40 kilometers an hour, but that's going to have to wait to the study, I guess. But to be proactive, and like I said, I sat out there for many times, and there are people going quite fast. I talked to Mr. Lee one time. The road was not turned over to the city, so we asked for barricades there to stop the traffic from going down there to get back Clarence Street. And it worked for a while, but then the construction started again, and the barricades were all removed, and people are using it. But it's very early and around supper time that you get the traffic, Councilor Bruno. And the kids do go down there to the school. There's young mothers with strollers.
Well, we're losing a councillor.
Personally, I see them there. I talked to them. So basically, that's the reason why Councilor created a fire. Push on. You still got me?
Yeah, we still have you.
Oh, yeah. That's all I have to say, Mr. Mayor. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Mr. Lee, any response to what you got out of that?
It was pretty garbled, but essentially some of those issues he talked about with those traffic volumes is what staff had observed. So this is where some of the ideas came from.
Okay, thank you. I have Councillor Clayloff.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm also with Mr. Baggio. I was one of the ones as well that put this forward. We put it forward over a year ago, just after we came on to council. We've been waiting for it to happen. The studies didn't happen. We've had these people sitting and waiting, hoping to hear something. And I think the big piece of all of this that we're all missing is that we're in a very different time now than we were in a normal time with the schools going on, people going to work. Right now, things are very quiet. So naturally, there's not as many cars there. There's not as much traffic. I like Councillor Baggio, spent a lot of time out there, a lot of cars, traffic, without having sidewalks, which sure they're coming, but who knows when at this point. We all know how long things take to happen. I don't think that being proactive and putting up a stop sign as a preventative measure is going to cost us very much. And I think surely think that it's something that we should be doing. And we should also be doing it where Councillor Beauregard is asking for as well, if that's what it takes. I don't think that we can afford to take the safety issue lightly. We've got parents there, and like you said, a lot of kids use that area. It's a built-up area, and it's an area that we need to be looking at, as well as the others.
Thank you, Councillor. Mr. Lee, can you clarify because there's been a couple comments with regards to the study on when it will start or when it has started and when it was budgeted for?
Right now, it's coming out of the roads budget and for 2020. And what we've done is the staff is currently putting together the text and the documentation to send out to the traffic engineers so they can come back with a report to us on which intersections have warranted issues. And also we're looking at trying to have them address, as it's brought up before by a number of councillors, the overall speeds within the city, what they should be in certain areas based on the road classifications. Should we entertain going to 40 in school zones and parks, or should we continue with the 50s that we have now? So this is just to give us a professional opinion, if you would, in moving forward and analyzing some of the new areas where development has happened and the traffic volumes have changed, the families, the demographics have changed.
Okay, and just to confirm, was it in the 2019 budget or the 2020 budget?
2020 budget, Your Worship.
So it was only scheduled to be done this year?
Well, we were going to take funds from, if we'd had some type of a surplus somewhere, we were going to try and snag some of those, but that didn't happen. The budgets were pretty well eaten up, if you would. So we've put some funds aside in the roads budget, and not a great amount, but
No, but in the what I'm saying is it wasn't scheduled for 2019. It was scheduled for 2020, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
There was nothing in the budget for 19.
Yeah, I just want to make sure council's aware of that, because there were two comments made that it wasn't done, but it was never scheduled. It was scheduled for this year. Any further questions from those that haven't spoken? Councillor Beauregard?
Through your worship, just like some of the other councillors have stated, I would be in favor of seeing a report first before going forward with the stop signs. I am not a huge fan in terms of putting stop signs, like always just putting a stop sign, because it seems like the policy is as soon as we hit there's an intersection, we just put a stop sign there. I'd like to see other alternative methods used in our city when possible. Like to see roundabouts used as a means, crosswalks, not necessarily like what we see at on Clarence Street and Catherine Street, but there's other crosswalk available that you don't need the lighting and in lower, less occupied areas. So I would like to see alternative solutions, not necessarily just always putting stop signs in there. And so that's my comment.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Bruno?
Thank you, Worship. One of the things I'd like to ask is, Councillor Clayliff mentioned complaints from these people. And I'm just wondering if she could, for my edification, how many are these people?
Councillor Clayliff?
Your Worship, like the other side, there's only a few. I don't know how many Councillor Baggio received. I received a couple, several. I went out, I looked, I talked to people, I looked at the situation. Again, I'm not in favor of stop signs all the time, But I guess I just look at this one and I feel until we can do something more, the study can be completed, because there are so many children on the street right now because of COVID-19 and what's going on. And I find it interesting to be told that that wasn't in the budget for last year, because we were told it was going to be done last year. And that's why Councillor Begg and I kept bringing it forward at every single meeting or every other meeting. And as far as saying that no study was done, we've had it in front of this council for months, and we kept bringing it back for review and asking for updates on it. So it's a bit disappointing to hear everyone now speaking against it when they've had opportunity for a long time. And like I said, I'm not particularly in favor of stop signs, but I am until something better can be found. And I just, again, because of the time that we're in, and there's more and more children there may not be family cars out and about during the day, in the morning, and the evening, like there were when we looked at this originally. But there's going to be a lot more children and families there. And I just think that until the study's done, why can't it be there? And if we have to remove it, I think we spent other dollars in other ways that probably were a waste. And I don't think that this is a waste when we're looking at safety and such a built-up area. It has become a very large area. If you can tell me the sidewalks are going to be in within the next month or 2 months, I'd say great. But we've been this route before. It took me how long to get a piece of sidewalk put in on another street. So I know what it means to get all of these things done. And I think a stop sign, even for 6 months, a year, is cheap insurance. And I just think that it's something that we should be going forward with. And if we remove it, great, we get to remove it after the study's completed.
Councillor Bruno?
Well, certainly I think we all want to err on the side of safety. On the second hand, I don't think a stop sign in or out is a big dollar item, whether we remove it, put it in, take it down, put it back up. I'm not concerned on this end of the dollars. I am concerned with the process that other councillors have mentioned how they've either waited or we've always done traffic counts. I was surprised at the speed of which this went forward, but then again, I'm not the ward councillor there, and as councillors Baggio and Plaintiff mentioned, this started back a while ago. I'm not a fan of stop signs either, and I know in my ward I'm going to be bringing another one up tonight, and it's sort of, for those of you that are old enough, Dragway Park, Cayuga. That's about the only thing it's not, doesn't have the signs up for. And yet, I'm surprised that, the folks there, whilst there are some asking for signs, are really asking more for enforcement. And I don't know that we've tried that approach yet. And I don't know when the sidewalks will be in. And I don't know really what kind of a scan or survey of the neighborhood has really been done. So, I haven't had enough compelling evidence to go against the process and the other councillors who are waiting for theirs based on traffic counts. And if I think about Elizabeth and I think about Chippewa, I certainly think there's a lot more traffic volume there, and it's weighted for those accounts. So at this point, I'm not convinced that it's due right now. Thank you, Worship.
Thank you. Any further comments by councillors? Seeing none, please rate. Oh, Councillor Borgard, do you have a comment? Or you're ready to vote?
I have a comment. Actually, I was going through your worship. I want to propose maybe amending the motion to include that this be temporary until the report that comes back with the traffic study, until it recommends that we do otherwise, potentially.
So you want to put that as an amendment? So you're going to put in, you're putting an amendment forward that this be a temporary stop sign until what date?
Until the report, when a report comes back after a study has been done on this intersection.
Okay. Do I have a seconder to that amendment? Councillor Kalaloff? we have an amendment on the floor that we'll put in we'll put in the stop signs, and then once the report comes forward, whatever that determines, the signs may or may not come out. The mover is Councillor Beauregard. The seconder is Councillor Caleff. Councillor Beauregard, any more comments on your amendment?
No.
Councillor Caleff, any comments on the amendment?
Nope, that's good. Thank you.
Any further comments or questions on the amendment? Seeing none, all in favor of the amendment, please raise your hand. All opposed? That amendment is defeated. So we're back to the main motion. Any further questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion that's on the floor, please raise your hand. All opposed? The motion is defeated. May I suggest that council refers this report for further study with the report? Can we do that as far as, we're not putting in a stop sign, but can we send the report over to the to staff that are doing the traffic study? Can we make sure that they include this intersection, since there has been a lot of talk on this?
Yes, I think that you could ask the staff review this in their traffic study.
Okay, is that all right, council? If I send this over to make sure that Chris Lee, within their study, make sure that they do look at this intersection? Mr. Lee, is that fine?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the rest of council. Yes, that's fine.
Okay. Anything further then from council? This will go forward to them though, even though we're not putting in the stop sign at this time. Okay, everybody's fine with that? Good, thank you, council. We are now moving to item 5. Engineering and Operations Department Engineering Division Report 2020-71, subject billing of the Lions Creek Municipal Drain East Branch. I have a mover, which is Councillor Bodner. A seconder, Councillor Wells. Will you second that? To get it on the floor? Thank you, Councillor Wells. Okay, Councillor Bodner.
Like, Mr. Mayor, do you want me to read the report?
No, well, you can ask your question. I read it out.
Okay, good. So through you to Alana, I guess, would be, or Chris, if he's taking on the position. What I want to know, I think I just wanted to give a heads up to people that they're going to get a bill for this Lions Creek Municipal Drain East Branch, and ask the question to staff, is that during this pandemic time, and there may be some people hit a little hard for paying some bills, is there a process? I know the answer to this, but I'd like it from staff. That is there a process if somebody just can't afford to scrape together all the money they need to pay this bill at this time? I know some are small, but there's some that are in the thousands of dollars there too. So through you, Mr. Mayor, to staff.
Thank you, Councillor. I'm going to actually pass this over to the CAO.
Sure, through your worship to the council. I'm not sure if drainage or engineering staff are prepared to answer that question. It almost sounds like a corporate policy question. And as council is aware, and all of you have met, the public has not yet met, we do have a new director of corporate services who is at the council meeting, but probably rightfully choosing to remain silent on this issue after only 2 weeks of work, 3 weeks of work. I don't know if Brian Bowles would be prepared to answer this question, but why don't I take this back? We have talked about penalty and interest relief during the pandemic. We are trying to work with the community as best as we can to make things, easy, I guess, as easy as can be expected to pay. The councillor is right. A lot of the amounts that go on residential bills this is one of those funny things where houses pay a little bit less than agriculture and large properties because it goes by the contribution to the watershed. The levy for drainage is based on acreage. But why don't I talk to Brian and we can work with engineering staff, and we can make sure that residents who are finding it difficult to pay because of the pandemic have some kind of latitude for payment.
I believe Ms. Vanderveen has a comment on this. Alana? Maybe you got to use a mouse. There you go.
Sorry, my apologies. Through you to Mr. Mayor. Yes, I have already had conversations with the manager of revenue and taxation that we are wanting to process with these billings for any of the people that can't afford the billing right now. Special arrangements can be made. I hadn't had the chance to speak with Mr. Bowles about that because he hadn't officially started when I had prepared this report. But there are considerations that can be made.
Thank you. Further question, Ron?
No?
That's good.
Fine.
Harry, do you have any questions on this one?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Alana. Alana, there are some of the contributors to this are not like the region, and are they putting out any restrictions on payments or any notices to us that they would like concessions on this as well on the payments?
Alana?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Wells. At this time, I haven't heard from any of the other either agencies or, utilities or the region. However, they haven't been notified of this either. Once they have received their bill, again, they can speak with manager of revenue and taxation to see if they can delay their payment if required.
Councillor Wells?
Thank you.
All set? Thank you. Any further questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Raise your hand. And that's unanimous. Item number 6 is being brought forward for Councillor Beauregard's conflict. I have mover Councillor Bruno, seconder Councillor Bodner. Planning and Development Department Planning Division Report 2020-72. Subject recommendation report on removing 14 and 18 Victoria Street from the Municipal Registry of Heritage Properties. Noting Eric's conflict. Any further questions on this one? Seeing none, all in favor? Raise your hand. And that is unanimous. Thank you, Council. Okay, you want to bring Councillor Beauregard back? No. Oh, has he got conflict on this one too? Sorry. I apologize. Yes, he does. We have Planning and Development Confidential Report 2020-75. Subject Agreement of Purchase and Sale. Again, Councillor Beauregard has a conflict. Our mover is Councillor Bruno. Our seconder is Councillor Bagu. Councillor Bruno, if you want to start.
Thank you, Worship. I looked at the background of this report, and as we do lots of other land sales, one of the issues I've had, and it's borne out with some examples in our industrial park, is some of the wording. I spoke to in this agreement, I spoke to Mr. Aquilina on Friday, and I've since spoken to the clerk and also CAO Louis. I would like to refer this report for another 2 weeks to Mr. Aquilina, and the suggestion that in terms of the terminology surrounding, and again, not just for this report, but construction starts, as to kick in that to kick in the other terms of the agreement. I'm concerned that we need stronger language around construction starts within that prescribed period of time. This is the gateway to the city on Highway 58, and I would not like to see the potential for some of the mistakes I think we've learned in that industrial park. So to that end, I would like to, and Mr. Aquilina has indicated that the urgency is not there in the sense of 2 weeks won't make a difference. And I think if all of us had a more fulsome agreement around that starting date, I think it would serve the city well in the long term and be a template for the future.
Thank you,
So I'd like to
Councillor.
refer that to Mr. Aquilina in 2 weeks to get a legal consult on that.
Thank you, Councillor. So this is a referral back to staff, and then the report will be reintroduced 2 weeks from now. I need a seconder for that. Councillor Wells. There is no debate on a referral. So we know the timeline is 2 weeks, and we know the reason is to clarify the construction period on the 2-year limitation of that goes on the record of sale, where if they don't start in 2 years, the property does revert back to the city. We understand that staff member Aquilina understands what Councillor Bruno is asking for. Doesn't see an issue in this. Dan, did you want to, any comment as far as timeline or what Councillor Bruno wants? Is there anything you need to add?
Mr. Mayor, no, completely understand. I had the conversation with Councillor Bruno as he indicated, and I'll bring something back to council in the 2-week time period.
Thank you. And we've lost Councillor Baggett. Short delay. We have lost a connection with Councillor Baggio at this time. Councillor Demery knows what that's all about.
Yeah, so far so good. Don't jinx me.
Yeah, no, you've been good tonight. Want to just give him a quick call? You want to take a 5-minute recess, Madam Clerk? So at this time, we're going to take a 5-minute recess to get Councillor Baggio back online. So our people at the controls can put us on pause. Council, here we go. All right, welcome back, everyone. We apologize, but we had one councillor that had computer troubles. He is now called in. You won't see his face, but you'll see a nice big phone there, and it's Councillor Bagu. So we are on item 7. It is a referral. All of council understands why we're referring this, and that was brought forward by Councillor Bruno, seconded by Councillor Wells. Councillor Bagu understands that it is under referral. So all those in favor of referral, please raise their hand. And Councillor Bagu, you vote yes or no?
Yes.
Okay, so that's unanimous. So that's item 7. Okay, so that is it with our items. We are now moving to item 9, which is proclamations. There are none this evening. I do have 4 sets of minutes of boards, commissions, and committees. I will move these in block. We have the minutes of the Grant Policy Committee meeting of October 21st, 2019. Minutes of the Environmental Advisory Committee meeting of January 8th, 2020. Minutes of the Port Colborne Public Library Board meeting of February 4th, 2020. Minutes of the Downtown Port Colborne BIA Board meeting of May 22nd, 2019. July 24th, 2019, September 25th, 2019, October 23rd, 2019, February 12th, 2020, and March 11th, 2020. I have a mover, Councillor Clayliff, a seconder, Councillor Bagu. Any questions to any of those minutes? Seeing none, all hands rise for those that are in favor. And again, that's unanimous. Councillor Bagu, you're in favor?
Yes.
Okay. Councillors' items, staff responses to previous councillors' inquiries. Staff responses is first. Staff, any responses? CAO Louis.
Through your worship to council, wanted to give a coronavirus verbal update. The EOC, that's Emergency Operations Center, is partially activated. The Emergency Control Group, that's senior staff, fire, CEMC, that's our Community Emergency Management Coordinator, HR staff, health and safety staff. We continue to meet. We're planning the city's recovery, and we're monitoring the city's, safe maintenance of essential services. We are planning and constantly looking at how and when we will open facilities such as City Hall, Farmers Market, Nickel Beach, washrooms in the downtown core, eventually the arena and the Valley Health and Wellness Center and all of the facilities there. As I've said in the past, and I will continue to say, given a choice between quickly opening and safely opening, we'll always choose safely opening. That's the reason that some of these decisions have been taking time and do take staff to implement. As far as staff goes, we are looking at gradually bringing on some of the staff that were previously subject to the hiring freeze. That includes some summer students that will come on and help with parks, help with the marina, which is already open, and eventually to help with Nickel Beach, which will be open in the future. And some of the staff that are vacant positions due to retirement or due to people who have moved on to other places of employment but haven't been replaced yet. The last thing I will report is that council can expect a written report at the second council meeting of every month, and that will include financial information about the effect of the pandemic and the facility closures on finances, which includes lost revenue from operations that are in revenue, such as the arena and the marina, for as 2 examples, as well as where we can cut expenses to help and offset those losses. So those reports will come at the end of the month, second meeting of the month, every month moving forward through the pandemic. And that's everything I have to say.
Great, thank you, Mr. CAO. Any questions to the CAO? Councillor Bodnar?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the CAO. I know you've been mentioning Nickel Beach every time. I hope you haven't forgotten about Centennial Park and the beach at Cedar Bay. I'm sure that's just an oversight, and it's on your radar, but I'd like to hear you say it.
Sure. Through your worship, Through your worship to Councillor Bodnar and all of the Ward 4 councillors, Councillor Wells included, and the rest of council from the rest of the wards, a very important asset in the crown of Port Colborne assets is Cedar Bay Centennial Beach. I often exclude it from my verbal remarks because it is a beach that doesn't have full staff there all day. Our parks staff and our Lakeview crew do maintain the park, the tennis courts, the playground equipment, as well as the garbages at Centennial, Cedar Bay. It is important. The park is open for passive use right now. The playground is not open. Walking on the beach is permitted. Settling on the beach, I hope I'm right about this, and our director is on the line. Settling on the beach or laying out a blanket and staying still is not permitted yet. Likewise at Nickel Beach. And like I said, my apologies, but the reason I include Nickel Beach is because we do hire students and we do collect a fee for cars to go on that beach, and that is one of the obstacles to opening the beach and one of the things that we'll have to have precautions in place to continue doing safely at Nickel. But yes, likewise, we are looking at an opening plan and a recovery plan for the other important beach in the city.
Okay, any further questions of the CAO? Thank you. Chief Cartwright?
Thank you, Your Worship. A couple items out of the last council meeting with regards to the burning bylaw. We were asked to bring the bylaw to the EOC. It was discussed at the EOC. The only concern we had during the course of that discussion was the numbers of people gathering. That appears that the province may have solved that problem if we go ahead with the increase to 10. So I just want to make sure council was aware of that. The other thing council needs to know, we within the fire department, including my executive assistant and Michelle, our communications coordinator, have been working to come up with a brochure and a mechanism by which we can educate the community with regards to the new rules that we're going to abide by within the city. Additionally to that, as we get complaints, a copy of that brochure will be given to the individuals who don't comply with the bylaw as an information brochure, and as well as a warning to make sure they do comply. Because if we come back, there could be more charges involved with regards to that. We're trying to stay away from that. We're working through an educational process. There's going to be a lot of items. There's an article today in the Welland paper about it. There will be stuff in the news, the city news, both on all of our web pages, both the city's and the fire department's web pages, as well as anytime we have an opportunity to present information to the community, we'll do so. So I think that pretty well covers any concerns with regards to the burning bylaw. The reason we couldn't go ahead with the information before tonight's council meeting is we couldn't jump the gun with regards to the bylaw in case there was some changes made to the bylaw, and that's up to council later on this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions to the chief on anything? Councillor Bagu, do you have any questions to the chief on this?
No, I don't.
Thank you. Councillor Bruno?
Yes, just real quickly to the chief. I had an individual call me who was concerned, didn't have a problem with the decision in the new bylaw, but was struggling with whether we're going to call it burning, a campfire, a bonfire. And the suggestion was made to me to bring forward about some kind of word surrounding containment or something to do with what it actually is. So in the education piece, will it be referred to as a bonfire, just a fire? Will it speak to size or containment? I think his thought process was in the right place in terms of messaging. So I don't know if the chief has a comment.
Chief?
Your Worship, through you to Councillor Bruno and all of council, tonight you'll note possibly at the top of the bylaw, we changed the way it's headlined. It now says open burning bylaw because the bylaw is written in such a way that open burning can still occur in the rural area, as it always has. And we've also added the words recreational fires. And within the bylaw, the recreational fire component is laid out very clearly as to what's required to meet those requirements.
Okay, Councillor Bruno?
Thank you, Chief. Yep.
Okay. Any other staff updates? Mr. Lee, do you have anything?
Nothing from me, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Ashley, anything from your department?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, if you don't mind, I would like to provide two updates. One which the CAO already touched upon. I'd like to just expand on his comments regarding Nickel Beach. So staff are in the process right now of finalizing our opening plan. And we'll soon be in a position to execute that as a result of the onboarding of summer students, and CAO Louis did refer to that taking place in the near future as well, which is great news. And summer students are a very important component of departmental operations through a number of service areas for us. So as council is aware, the city leases Nickel Beach from Valet, and so part of the planning process to open the beach has included and required city staff to communicate with the property owner, being Valet. So that process is taking place now. And part of the plan is also to include, obviously, provisions that would limit the spread of COVID-19. We're looking at things like physical distancing, hand sanitizers, cleaning, signage, and the like. So council will be kept informed as we near an opening date, and we're looking sometime in the very near future. And unless there's questions, I have one more update that I would like to provide, Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I would like to touch upon the farmers market as well. We are also in the process of finalizing those plans to reopen the farmers market. The plan, again, includes various provisions responding to COVID-19, including potentially and likely limiting attendance numbers at the market, hand sanitizers, hand washing stations, pavement markings, signage, and similar provisions. So once again, staff will keep council informed as we near an opening date, and as well communicate that information to the public. And I'm happy to respond to any questions.
Thank you, Ashley. Any questions to staff? Councillor Bodner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Ashley. So here's what I'd like to see with the beach openings. We've heard the Premier say that each Monday he will announce what is going to be opened for the following Friday. So my question is, if next Monday he says beaches are open, Nickel and Centennial, by Friday, will those beaches be open?
Ashley?
So thank you, Councillor, and thank you, Mr. Mayor. So as I mentioned during my comments a little earlier, the onboarding of students is an important component of our ability to open the beach. So we expect that to be taking place, and that process in terms of orientation training, specifically regarding COVID-19 and interactions with the public and various other protocol. We expect that to begin, I believe it's probably sometime, it's going to be sometime next week. So as soon as we get those staff trained and on board, we are hoping to be able to move quickly on opening the beach once again.
Yep. CAO has something to add. Councillor Bodner.
Through your worship, Councillor Bodner, I'd like to add to that answer and sort of say, and I think I reported this verbally or in writing the first time I brought a COVID report to council. Being able to open doesn't always mean we will open. And the reason I make that qualification is because we need a plan to open. We need to be able to follow provincial guidelines, regional public health guidelines. Sometimes there's built infrastructure changes needed to our facilities, such as dividers between cashiers and customers. And we are using this time right now to do some of that stuff. However, we have a lot of facilities. We sometimes have back-ordered materials. We're in a fight with every business and every other government agency to get things like masks and gloves and sanitizer and plexiglass and so on. The other thing is it takes some of our facilities time to open up. So using one example as the arena, if Doug Ford said you can open arenas tomorrow, we can't have the public showing up with skates in one day because it takes 2 to 3 weeks to make an ice surface. Now, if the province would be generous and say, you have 30, it will be opening in 30 days. We could use that 30 days to do an effective and safe opening. So one of the things that's caught us in the past, and we've discussed this at the emergency group, and we've discussed this with the mayor, is the timeliness of the announcements. So we were a little bit surprised that we had about 48 hours notice that we could open the marina. And we took a few extra days. We did open our boat ramp, and we took a few extra days to make sure that opening was safe and we had enough staff to support the users of those facilities. I think it would be a shame if we brought on more people, more stakeholders than we were capable of handling. So directors in every single department are working on those recovery plans, have worked on them already, have submitted them to the control group, and I will be passing the ones for Parks and Recreation, because I think it's top of mind, on to council in the couple of days, the first couple of days of next week, and probably including them, I think you'll see them in my staff report on June 22nd at council.
Councillor Bodner?
Yeah, I understand all the constraints, and we don't want extra staff until we actually need them, and the planning and everything. But we almost had a dry run. What if Niagara wasn't included in that restriction, and this Friday beaches could open? So we kind of got a thought process that it could be next Monday, could be the Monday after, could be the Monday after. I guess I just wouldn't want to see us go, oops, wow, well, okay, now we really got to put a plan in place. And I know staff are working on plans, but I wouldn't want to have to go in front of the public and say, we weren't quite ready for this. So I just like us, and I know you are, I just like us to be as ready as we can be with what we have to work with. So I think you've said we will be, and the public will just have to wait if we're not ready when the province says we could be open.
CAO?
I'm good with that.
Yep. You are set?
Yeah. So through your worship to Councillor Bonner, I do appreciate that. And we will, and we are working on that plan. We do have components of that plan already ready for some of our facilities. I am in contact with the CAOs in Niagara, for the most part, Fort Erie, Lincoln, St. Catharines. There's beaches, and we're talking, Wainfleet has the regional beach as well as some non-public beaches or road allowances that people access. We want to sort of be unified in our approach, and we are trying to also prepare for what could be pressure from outside communities, even pressure from the GTA on our local beaches. So it's all part of the safe reopening plan. But I do appreciate the insight, and we will take your comments to heart when we make those plans.
Thank you, Mr. CAO. Just one comment, Councillor Bodner. The town of Innisfil is limiting their access to their beaches for locals only. So, I mean, that's something that we could direct staff to do. Not saying just Port Colborne, because we do rely on the income, but it could be Niagara residents only. So that's something for council to think about as we move forward. Okay. I had Councillor Bodner before you go. Councillor Bagu, do you have any questions to staff? I can put you on the list.
For councillor items, or?
No, just for, with regards to what we're talking about.
No, I'm good right now.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Bruno?
No, I'll pick them up under council items, but they will be directed to staff.
That's fine. Okay. Any other staff have anything? No? We do have Brian Bowles on. If Brian could unmute himself and show his face. We know council has met him, but maybe we could show our new Director of Corporate Services, and who I just generally call the Treasurer, to maybe give a wave to our people out in the virtual land. And we do welcome you to the City of Port Colborne, and I know you've been here for 2 weeks, and it's trial by fire based on the times we're in. And we do appreciate you coming here, and I think we've got, something my father would say, a Jim Dandy guy to take over our treasurer's job. So welcome, Brian.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll move now to councillors' issues and inquiries. This week I'll be going alphabetical order from top to bottom. Starting off with Councillor Bagu.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. To Director Lee, once again, the status of the Vale Center roof repairs. Have we a commitment to get them fixed? A date?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Bagu. A date we do not have. The reason being is the contractor record for the repairs to the roof is Stoll Construction. Them and their subs have just currently back to work now. So our facilities manager is working with them to get them on site as soon as we can. We're hoping within the next week or so. There's a lot of little parts and pieces that have been finalized to get them to that point. So they're sort of the last piece in the puzzle.
Councillor?
Okay. Okay, thank you very much. My second item is, of course, the famous railway crossing on Sugarloaf and Elm Street.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Bagu. Engineering staff has had 2 meetings now with GeoRail, which used to be Trillium, and with their subcontractor who has been giving us the pricing and will be doing the work for Trillium/GeoRail. I personally had discussions with their president this afternoon, and the panels, the precast concrete panels that we're going to be installing, those have been ordered, and currently the delivery date is 8 weeks. So that takes us to the first week in August. We're hoping that they can deliver on that promise, but that being said, GeoRail and their contractor are ready to move as soon as those panels arrive.
Councillor?
Okay, I thought the city's part was going to be delivered by the first week of June, but I must have been wrong, or they changed the delivery date. Very well. The third and last item is probably for Nicole. I'd just like to know the status of the marina occupancy. Like, is it filling up, or are we getting good? A lot of boats put in there, or how many are left, and the washroom facilities, whether we're going to open them up part time or clean them every other hour or something like that.
Ashley?
That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Bagu, for the question. At the present time, we're sitting at approximately 370 confirmed seasonal customers that will be returning to the marina this season. That being said, we do expect, as the weather continues to improve and becomes more consistent, we're likely going to see some more customers coming forward and confirming their intentions on docking with us this year. We do also have a waiting list, which staff are in the process now of beginning to reach out to. That list includes approximately 60 customers. So we're looking at contacting them now and getting them secured with a dock at the marina. With regard to washroom facilities, public washroom facilities, now that we are looking at bringing on summer students, we're going to be able to take a look at deploying staff to make sure that we have the ability to clean those facilities regularly. So yes, in the upcoming weeks, we're looking at opening washroom facilities in various areas throughout the city.
Councillor?
Okay, thank you very much. That's all I got, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Bagu. Councillor Beauregard?
I have nothing.
Thank you. Councillor Bodnar?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm not sure who will pick up on this, but I had a few people calling about the racetrack and the noise that it's making almost every night with practices for a big event. And I just wondered what restrictions, if any, were put on the racetrack. I can remember meetings years ago where we all sat around with the residents and the owners and came to some kind of an agreement, but I don't know how carved in stone that was. And I appreciate being a small business and myself that, you know, the racetrack is is trying to get up and running, albeit without patrons, but at least, you know, on some form of video or something. But I really want to know from the neighbor's point of view, what's going on as far as either restrictions or noise bylaw or whatever.
Thank you. Mr. Aquilina?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Councillor Bonner. I'm not aware of the meeting that you said was made between the racetrack owners in the neighborhood. I'm not aware of that. I can inform that the property is a non-conforming use, haven't been in existence for decades, and way before our zoning bylaw. The first zoning bylaw in 1982 was the former township of Humberston, and that was in operation. So I am not aware of any documentation that there was any agreement between the residents, the owners, and the city. If there's a complaint regarding the noise, then we can act on that complaint basis under the noise bylaw.
Councillor Bodnar?
So just to confirm then, so the neighbors will have to file a complaint with bylaw to actually get this started. Is there, I get that. Is there a way we can be proactive and actually just express that concern with the racetrack and say, what's your plan? Like, was it just a one-off for the big race, or is this going to be a weekly occurrence? You know, oftentimes neighbors don't like to, really come forward, but they will in this case. I just wondered whether the racetrack is going to keep doing it. If they go back to their normal, day of race and then a day of practice, I think the neighbors would be quite okay with that.
Mr. Aquilina?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Councillor Bonner. What I will do is I will contact bylaw enforcement and try to arrange that exact meeting between bylaw enforcement and the actual racetrack owners to express the concerns that you've made this evening. And I can report back to council at the next meeting what actually was resolved.
That would be good. And I guess if it keeps up and the neighbors want to file a complaint, that will be up to them. But knowing that there will be a response in 2 weeks, may be okay. I'm good with that.
Okay, you're all set, Councillor, then?
No.
Go ahead. No. Next question.
It's a short evening. I got to string this out a little bit. Through you to, I guess, Dan again. Dan, there's been a number of emails and concerns by a few people about asphalt grindings going into the quarry and being possibly temporarily stored in pit 1 or sitting there for we're not sure how long. Can you enlighten us on whether this is on your radar and probably without too much detail, is it being looked at?
Mr. Aquilina?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through to Councillor Bonner. Yes, the matter has been referred to our staff to then inform Port Colborne Quarries that in fact it is a violation of the zoning bylaw because asphalt products are not processed on the quarry property, thereby not allowing it to be stored. So it is a zoning bylaw infraction.
Okay. And is there a time frame on how long this may take to resolve? Is it going to be removal or is that to be determined yet?
Mr. Aquilina?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through to Councillor Bonner. Like any other zoning bylaw infraction, we give the property owner an opportunity to make application to remedy the violation. So a time frame is given to the property owner to make application to comply. If that time frame passes, then the next enforcement gets ramped up again. So it would be in the hands of the property owner to inform the municipality what their intentions are.
Okay, and will we get a report on how this is going, or is it simply not available to us until a decision is made?
Mr. Aquilina?
Thank you. Through Mr. Mayor to Councillor Bonner. Because it's a violation, what we typically do, if council wants to have an actual report, because if it's a confidential matter, it'll be something that we could provide council in closed session.
Okay, I think it's a flashpoint enough that that we should at least have a comfort level that it's proceeding in a timely manner. So I make that request if it's okay with the rest of the council.
Mr. Aquilina?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Bodnar and all of council. So that direction would then go to the city clerk to ensure that the matter will be the council report. And I will accompany that with a report to council for closed session.
Okay.
All right. Clerk says she's
Good.
fine with that, so we'll let her bring that forward, Councillor. Is that fine?
Okay. Yes, that's fine. Yep. And one more, Mr. Mayor, through you to, I guess it might be Ashley. It involves Centennial Beach, anyways, and whether I can't confirm this, but one of the neighbors told me that they made a complaint about people jumping the gun and using the beach, and it was after hours, and the police came, and the police told them that it was to be taken care of by bylaw officers, not them. So I got a couple of questions. If that's the case, how does somebody get a hold of a bylaw officer at 11:30 at night or 12 o'clock at night? If you could answer that, I'll wait for that answer first. Thanks.
I can probably answer that, Councillor. If it is after hours, it should be the Niagara Regional Police. In the original document that came down from Chief McCullough in conjunction with Niagara Region's bylaws department and all the municipalities, we would look after the majority of things that go on within our own communities, but those things that the police need to get involved with. So if our staff are, let's say, at Lakeview Park and having an issue with a group of people they won't leave, police can be called in to move them. But if it's after hours when we're not here, they're supposed to take over and move those people along. So we can let the chief know about this, and that they should be making sure that their officers know that if we're not available, we're the first line of defense in most cases, but if we're not available, they're the first line of defense.
Okay.
So we'll make sure that we notify both Chief McCullough and Staff Sergeant LaPlante.
And could you let us know as councillors the results of that inquiry? And if it indeed is the police after hours, then
I'll let you know. I'll email when I get that back from the chief. I'll forward it to you guys.
Great. Okay. Thank you.
Is that it?
That's it.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Bruno?
Thank you, Your Worship. From having 0 or 1, I now have 4 this evening. So this is my all-time record for councillors' items.
Councillor Danish?
One I'd like to bring up was actually I added it on the fly here after Councillor Bodner's question about fees and interest penalty, et cetera, et cetera. My concern is with water bills and tax bills after what I had heard in response to Councillor Bodner was that, you know, our next council meeting is June 22nd, 8 days before the end of the month. I think that's a little tight to have people who are concerned whether it was going to be an extension or not. And I didn't know whether either under the authority that you have and the CAO and COVID, or if Mr. Bowles did want to answer, I mean, can we come up with something in the interim, whether that's taking it from June 30th to July 15th until you come up with something, which means people now will hear about the next month? Or if you could just speak to the issue of a plan, and is there any ability to tell concerned residents prior to June 22nd?
Mr. Bowles?
Sure. Through your mayor to council, maybe a couple pieces of information just with respect to tax billings. Tax billings have just been mailed out. We have experienced this year so far better collection rates than we have in the previous years. Right now, staff is working on a report for June 22nd, as was mentioned. The proposal right now at a high level is an ability for residents to be able to defer tax payments on an application basis. There would be a means test, an ability to pay, and potentially a proposal for a test that would actually show that the resident had historically paid their taxes. Both would help illustrate the impact of not being able to pay taxes related to COVID-19. So to the councillor's question, presently June 22nd was our date for council to review this potential policy. With taxes due on July 2nd, that leaves about 11 days between that day and the June 22nd day. We have been, as residents have inquired if there would be a tax extension, been advising residents that we would be bringing something to council at the end of the month. Presently, our understanding is residents have been willing to accept that. I'd leave it to council if they want to move it up any further and do something at this meeting. It would be my recommendation that council address it in its entirety on the 22nd.
Councillor Bruno?
I'm fine with that, but I'm wondering if tonight is a heads up to there will be a plan put forward that does not include a blanket extension, or is that pushing that too far?
Mr. Bowles?
Through your worship to council, presently staff's report would not be for a blanket extension. It would be for a process which required an application, and I guess the points that I've brought forward already with respect to a means test and historically being in good standing would exist. So we would not be proposing at this point in time, and I guess we're advising council that our proposed report does not have a blanket extension in it at this time.
Councillor Bruno?
Thank you for that comment. Thank you for that comment.
Next question.
Sure. Next question is in regard to, through you to either Mr. Lee or Alana. Got a resident come to me with regards to, councils will know that the easterly on Barrack Road from Elm, that whole stretch feeds along ditches, and prior to getting to the Robin Hood property there, the old Robin Hood property, it takes a southerly route under Barrack Road and goes into what a lot of the older folks in town used to call the government ditch, which went in through Robin Hood and out into the Weir. I'm not sure how many years, but the resident that I spoke to has been around for 30 or 40 and he hasn't seen it clean. Now that is a ditch and not a drain. And how this came to attention was that it was talk that the region was going to purge the water tower, and it could fit through that wide ditch. But once it got to the point of the pipe going under the road, and once it gets under the road, it would saturate that field. All of that, I guess I'll call it a watershed for lack of a better word, would handle the water tower, in behind what is now that storage building, the regional wastewater treatment plant, and perhaps even out to Sherwood Forest Lane and a proposed development that would be there off of Omer. So I contacted Alana, and just absolutely superb service. She went, checked it out, laid out 4 or 5 options, and is talking about in the long term looking at that for a possible drain. So through you to Mr. Lee or Alana, I'm just wondering what kind of direction, if any, you need tonight to look into that, and if there would be a cost to look into it, because I think your concept and the Seaway may be a partner in having to pay that will clear up a multitude of deep, wet backyards for those homes on Barrack Road and I think, facilitate a lot of drainage in that area. So I don't know if Chris or Alana, you want to speak to that or what your thoughts are.
Lana, do you want to start, or Chris, do you want to start?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Bruno. I'll turn the floor to Alana. She has specifics on that she probably wants to speak to. I know her and Councillor Bruno have had some deep discussions on this and which are some of the paths going forward. I'll let her explain some of those if you don't mind.
Alana? Sure.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Bruno. That has been a concern prior to the building of the regional water tower in that location. Concerns and comments were brought forth from engineering, specifically to the region saying, where are you going to discharge your water tower to? And it was never addressed at that time. Councillor Kenny, prior to this seat, also had concerns about it. And unfortunately, nothing was done at that time. I have spoken with a few owners along that area, not only on Barrack Road, but also on that face Elm Street, as those properties are quite long and do reach all the way to the Seaway property. And they are all very concerned. 2 years ago, we had gone in the storage pond on Elm Street that we own, the retention pond. There was a beaver dam back in there. So we had the beavers trapped and we had the dam removed at city's expense, even though it was on Seaway property, just to expedite that work. To be able to facilitate the people of the watershed, I'll call it, and ensure that we can offer the best quality of service, my recommendation is to make that a municipal drain. That way we can go in at any time, remove any blockages that may be in there, and keep that water going. Looking at the ditch back there, my guess is probably 50 to 60 years that since it's been cleaned, and it is very dilapidated. There's fallen trees, the number of emerald ash borers, the trees that were killed from that hasn't made it good for any ditch, especially back there where nobody seems to be concerned about it. We can speak with the Seaway. I've asked that Mr. Lee would do that, or either the mayor or CAO, as that connection is a little bit above me. But we can certainly start with them to see if they would be interested in cleaning it. There are unfortunately a lot of people that are along there that are reliant on that dilapidated system, and they would all truly benefit from it.
Mr. Bruno?
Thank you, Elena. So in the short term, I mean, that process could easily be a year to two to get it named as a drain and all that. Is there anything that can be done in the interim? I'm not sure who owns that last lot where on Barrack, maybe that's the Seaway, but to give any kind of or relief, is there, given the region has the tower, the wastewater treatment plant, I mean, and that they didn't have an engineered plan that they came through when they spent millions on the water tower, do you see any short-term possibility of relief?
Through you, Mr. Mayor.
That's a real on-the-spot question.
No, not at all. Through you to Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Bruno. Speaking with the Seaway to see if they would be willing to work with us. As my email had said to you, hopefully the Seaway would be willing to pay for that. Otherwise, can we ask the Seaway that we go in and clean it at our expense? Should council find the money to be able to put it towards that?
Thank you for that update. So to take this forward to look at drainage, do you need any motion here, or you're already set with investigating?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Bruno. It would depend on how you'd like to proceed. If you'd like us to do it as a step-by-step process, speaking with the Seaway is probably our best option, as it is their property. Let's try and work with our neighbor. I have had off-the-record conversations with the engineering firm who is interested in the work, and they are willing to start as soon as we appoint them, should that be the option that we choose to go down.
Let me throw this out. How about concurrently, Seaway and sort of ducks in order, would that just be at this stage an estimate from that engineering firm?
Through you to Mr. Mayor, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Bruno. It could be an estimate. If we are choosing to petition as the road authority, then it wouldn't have to be an estimate. It would just be something, should council choose to, we can proceed with that.
I guess I'm thinking if I was a member of the rest of the council and wasn't in their ward, then and they have other concerns, I think an estimate might be in order to make them to make an educated decision. But I would like to see at least an estimate and those conversations with the Seaway.
So, Councillor Bruno, what I'll do is, if we can work in conjunction with Alana and Chris through my office and the CO's office, I'll have Nancy set up a teleconference call with the Seaway for us to talk about that. We'll confirm who owns what lands down there, make sure we know exactly where the ditch is going to start to be repaired and end to be repaired. Get all that in order. If we can have the Seaway do it on their dime is probably far better than having the taxpayer or even making it a municipal drain where all the landowners that pour into that drain, as you know, would pay for that. So if we can kind of work in conjunction with that and then come back to council, hopefully by the next meeting with some sort of plan moving forward, is that fine with you?
That would be awesome. Thank you very much, Elena.
Okay. Next question.
My home away from home now is Barrack Road, and speeding vehicles, again, first thing in the morning, later at night. I've brought this to your attention a number of times. My concern is that if the police are doing it, how often they're doing it, what's been the experience. I mean, I'm always cognizant of them wanting call-in and statistics. Now I want statistics. Have they been out there? When have they been out there? Did they stop any? That kind of thing. And just so I can bundle it together, and it may be some of the same infractors, is I've had calls from now the latter end of Steele Street from basically Oast, Franklin, right through to Barrack. That's a straight run. Complaints there, speeding, although this has been more in the evening, so it may not be the same folks doing it. It seems the Barrack one is, morning to work, 3 to 5 o'clock. Steele Street seems to be more in the evening, but if they're in that area, they've now got 2 contiguous streets that join that they could perhaps do some radar patrols and give us some stats. So I'd ask Mr. Mayor if you could look into that.
I'll take that to my next police services board meeting and ask senior staff if they can prepare that for us.
Thank you. And now lastly, a concern I don't keep bringing it up, but it is the marina and the condition of it. So on the on Sunday, took a leisurely drive around town, and the condition of the Marina Road down to the Marina parking lot is, I can honestly say with pictures that I can send Ashley and others later, probably the worst stretch of mowed grass of all our parks. So when I see that, and no offense to the folks that use the Elizabeth Street water pumping station driveway there, is in better shape than the Marina Road, I'm not happy, because to me, that isn't a staff issue, that is a culture issue, or that is a prioritization issue. Councillor Danch earlier talked about the gem of H.H. Knoll Park. Well, I consider the marina to be one of those gems. And as part of our brand, that to me doesn't get much higher than the promenade and that park. And for the litter that's on there today, I took my pictures at 5:20 tonight. And I don't want to talk about the condition of the grass going into the marina, where a lot of people come down there to see it. You know, I don't know if what needs to happen there is the marina. It's an issue of, you know, Parks cuts the grass from Sugarloaf down to the parking lot, and then the marina staff does the other. But I can tell you that that is not something to be proud of. And, you know, the building, the back of the pavilion could use a good power spray wash. What really gets me is the hardest things for cities to do is find manpower and dollars to do something. This is a money-making operation that could afford to call someone with a power washer, a company, and do it, or prioritize cutting that stretch of grass. There is no reason I see that has to look in that deplorable state. I mean, this is an opportunity to give park staff more time off, by more time at other parks, by letting the marina either cut it, buy a riding lawnmower, just treat that place as the gem that it is. I mean, to not have that building power washed or that hayfield on the way down there is just not on. I personally did not bring it to the attention of staff, because if that entity, that marina, doesn't stack up high enough on the list of priorities, then we've got trouble in Canal City, if that's the culture. Because that, to me, is a showplace. It's what we leverage off of. And I'm just, I'm at the end of my rope of talking about that same issue that's, you know, from the railroad track to the road down to the parking lot. Like, somebody's got to make a decision here on how we're going to treat that building. And I just find it, I find it disappointing that that stretch of property is not given more of a priority. So I don't know whether it's Ashley, the CAO, I know there's students on board, but some kind of cultural change or prioritization of that place needs to happen. So I don't know if Ashley wants to weigh in, or Nicole, or the CAO, but I'm at the end of my rope on talking about the condition of the entryway there in the sense of arrival. I'll tell you, the last thing is, you know, I look at the marina starts at Sugarloaf, and I can tell you this, that there's people in the community and a senior staff member who thinks it starts at the promenade. And I'd have to say I agree with them, that that's our showpiece and wrapping around to there. And at some point, something's got to change there. So forgive me for rambling at the end, but I don't know if anybody wants to answer that.
Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Ashley, do you want to go ahead, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Bruno. Certainly hear the concerns. I will make sure first thing I do after this council meeting is follow up with staff to ensure that we rectify the grass and litter that is found, as well as ensuring that the pavilion and any other surrounding areas that need to be cleaned and washed are taken care of. And I do want to comment, I can understand that this item has come up before. I understand the frustration and I hear it. I want to say, in defense of staff, it's not a cultural problem. We certainly do. We have many jewels in Port Colborne. The marina is certainly one of those. And we recognize that. And I apologize for the frustration that you're feeling now. And certainly first priority is to rectify that.
Thank you, Ashley.
Thank you, Ashley. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. And I know our CAO heard that loud and clear. And I can promise you that he will make changes to make sure that that area is not brought up in any of these meetings again, unless it's for a good response, which I'm sure Councillor Bruno would bring forward once he sees things cleaned up there. Councillor Danch. Any issues?
Well, you got about 14 of them.
You get 3.
Okay, well, 3 works. So I'm just going to echo some of Mr. Bruno's complaints there with Barrack Road. The one that I have that he didn't touch on was some of the speed going towards the Robin Hood. I guess there is no sign there apparent to the homeowner as far as a 50-kilometer zone or something like that. So the one that I got was some excessive speed going down the road. So maybe the roads guy, Chris, could look into that one for us, satisfy that problem.
Mr. Lee? Speed signs on Barrack?
To you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Dench. I'll have staff have a look at that and see what signage we have to put in to verify it's the 50K and people are aware of that through that section. I assume you're referring to the section east of Elm Street, is that correct?
Yeah, heading east, yes. Yeah, heading east, yeah.
Perfect.
So if you could look into that, that'd be great. The one other item I had was the, and I'm looking at my little notes. I guess we'll stick with you, I guess. If we could maybe have a look at the corner of Elm and Main when we're heading south, the intersection there, a possible advanced green, if it could possibly be in the works. When you get the Oskin guys getting out, and you got the Jungle Blouser guys getting out, and you got a few others, they're heading up Elm Street, and they want to make that left-hand turn. I guess it gets backed up past Omer Avenue, and I don't know, a short advanced green might help to get a few more of these cars through. I realize this is a regional road, and we probably have to, I can't say that, but I mean, we probably have to do some work with the region to make this happen. Any chance of that one?
Mr. Lee?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Dench. I'll reach out to the Regional Transportation Group, have this discussion with them, and bring forward your suggestion. We've been in conversations with them on this intersection already with regards to what you had brought forward at the last council meeting, so we have their attention at that intersection. That being said, hopefully we can bring something back positive to you in the near future.
That'd be great. I'm sure some of the guys that want to get home from work would love to get there a little bit quicker, like we all do. The last meeting I brought up those bollards in front of the old Sunbeam Shoe or Rosedale Towers there along Main Street. I just wonder if there was been any movement on that at all, or.
Mr. Lee?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Danch. Yes, as I just had stated or hinted to minutes ago here, we've reached out to the transportation group of the region. They've gotten back to us. Their staff are looking at some alternatives. My understanding is that they've talked with the property owner as well. That being said, they haven't come forward with a resolution to their problem yet. So once they do, you'll be the first to know once I do.
And I think the problem is driving your car on the lawn and the sidewalk is the problem there, but thank you so much. I had one guy on Clarence Street, 254 Clarence. He has a curb cutout in front of his home, and it goes to no driveway, and he tells me that he's been trying for years to get this thing taken out so that he just has a curb in front of his home. I wonder if maybe we could have a look at that. It was 254 Clarence.
Mr. Lee?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Danch. I will bring that address and that location to the attention of staff. We're doing our sidewalk and curb replacement. And I think if it's just a short enough section, we'll most likely be able to fit it into this year's budget. So we'll see what we can do there.
And that'd be super. And the last one I want to pick on tonight is Ashley. Out for a little bike ride last night. I don't ride a bicycle, I ride a motorcycle. But Weaver Road there, we have on each side of the walk path, there's a vertical pylon or a vertical piece there to kind of slow you down. I noticed that a lot of the other crossings we have gates that really restrict how fast you go through them, and that concern being that you may be that person on the trail that doesn't care, and you can just go zipping right by that. Any idea if we could maybe put a gate there that slows the pedestrians, the bicyclists, and that down a little bit more? If we could get that into the plans down the road?
Ashley?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's certainly something that I will bring back to staff, and we'll review that and report back to council.
Thank you.
That's all I have. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councillor Danch. Councillor Desmarais.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just have two items this evening. First one is something I was speaking with both Scott and Brian Bowles about earlier, and that's about forms of payment that the city will accept. I've had some people reaching out to me and asking me why the city doesn't accept credit cards. So I've asked both Scott and Brian to weigh in on this, so possibly they could make a statement about what's happening and what they're looking into.
Brian?
Sure. Thank you. Through your worship to council. The city does currently, the majority of our payments are done with debit card, checks, online banking. A couple of the facilities do use credit cards. The Marina and Arena are two examples. I think your question is timely because just last week, staff had a discussion. We had a meeting with respect to this about bringing credit cards to more facilities across the city. I think there's going to be more to follow in the coming months with respect to that.
Councillor Desmarais?
Okay, thank you very much. These people will know that you're looking at different options, and that's always a good thing. The other item I have has to do with Friends Over 55 Senior Center. They've made an announcement on social media that they're in big trouble financially. COVID has really made it difficult for them. With the they were forced to close for the first weeks of the pandemic. It's created a problem where their revenues obviously have stopped, and now we're looking at the. Well, it's likely now that we're going to be seeing the tax clinics, the foot clinics, the seniors driver's tests, financial workshops, and over 20 other different activities and workshops that are likely not going to happen now. And this facility is in real risk of having to close for good. So I'm wondering if there's something that we can do. I know they have put out on social media that they reached out to the city and asked for help with some fees. I'm not sure exactly what that was. They were looking at having some fees waived. I'm not sure what that was. I didn't want to engage on social media, but I would like to hear what, if anything, we could do. And if there's nothing in the hopper being planned, then maybe we could put our attention on this and see if we can't do something to help out. There is a GoFundMe page, and I noticed that there's more than one councillor here that's already made a payment on that, but that's just not going to be enough. So I will turn it over to Mr. Louie, I guess.
Councillor, actually, I can answer that. In speaking with Nancy Giles today, they reached out, but they put an application in for the next granting period, which closes on June 30th, I believe, is our closing date. So that'll be brought forward to that committee and see. But that's the only thing that I've seen come to the city. I'm not sure if they've spoken to Treasury at all over and above that, but that is what they did. They contacted Nancy and they've put in that application. So, but that is looked at the granting period that we do.
Okay, thank you. That must be what they've meant about asking for fees waived. But possibly somebody on staff could take a look out, maybe just reach out to them and ask if there's some way that we can help out if there are things that might be eased for them.
Okay, I'll have Nancy reach out for us. She knows that she's in contact with the person that's always
with Jack. Yeah,
getting. Actually, I think it was
Teresa. Yeah,
well, I think it was a lady that contacted Nancy originally. But I'll talk to Nancy tomorrow and find out or ask her to contact them and see where we can go.
Very good, thank you. That's all I have for this evening.
Thank you, Councillor Desmarais. Councillor Clayla.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. I only have one item. I just wanted to, it's actually a public service announcement, and so many of the councillors have actually touched on what I wanted to speak about. And that is just a reminder one more time for everybody out there, when it comes to issues that require police assistance. We had a few issues on the weekend, and I've heard people talking about speeding issues, about all different ones by law, different places where the police have to be called. And we talk about the stats that Councillor Bruno brought up and everything. And I think that this is really important. I just want to put it out there to everyone in our whole city to be aware. Please, I've heard it time and again. I've had people call me. I know you all have as well. Nobody wants to call the police. It's a process to go through to report an incident or to be involved in one of these calls. I just want to again reiterate how important it is to the stats that we let everyone know that when you call, please go through the process. 911, it takes a bit of time, but you need to get through it. And also, if you're just calling to report an incident, you don't have to do it online. They ask you to, but you can just stay on the line. You can report an incident, whether it's happening then or something from earlier. If you need to talk to somebody, dispatch will come on. The phone number to call is 905-688-4111. And I'm encouraging all to do this. But before you hang up the phone, what I want you all to do is to ask for an incident report. I think that most times the dispatcher will ask you if you would like an incident report, and I think many times people aren't bothering to get them. The difficulty with that is when there goes to be a follow-up for anything, if that incident report isn't there, we don't know how to trace it. And we need these stats in order to show what's going on. We've had a lot of calls regarding the off-road vehicles. I know you've all heard about the ATVs, the motorcycles, all of these issues. But if we want to do something about it and we want to show that we need more coverage for the speeding, all the things that we've been talking about, that's my one thing tonight. I would really like to ask everybody in Port Colborne to take that time. Don't just call councillors and ask them to report it or tell them what's going on. You need to call, make those calls yourself, and you need to ask for an incident report. That's your duty at the end of the call to make sure you've got that. That's the end of it for me.
Thank you,
Thank
Councillor.
you.
Councillor Wells.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have about 4 items. I'm going to start out with the first one, and I think that you can address this one for me. It's with regards to speeding on Miller Road and the placement of a flashing sign. I believe some of the residents were advised that there would be a step up in the regional police enforcement on that road and that the sign would be installed. Do you have any status on that?
I don't, but I think Mr. Lee might. Chris, do you have any update from the region on that?
Through you, Your Worship, and the rest of council, and particularly Councillor Wells. No, nothing on that particular section on Miller Road. I can reach out though to Regional Transportation Group and ask them if they've had any recent activity or investigation done.
Because there was an email that came in, I'm not sure how long ago, maybe a month or 2 ago, with some of the residents were contacting the region, and yep. I was CC'd. I thought you were CC'd also on this, that they were going to be placing that. So if we can reach out again and ask them to make sure it is placed there. They did promise to place it. I don't believe there was a date on that email, but they did promise to get it out there this year.
Through to you, Mr. Mayor. If you could forward that email through to me, I'll reach out to the transportation group at the region tomorrow.
Okay, we'll get that tomorrow and get it over to you. Thank you. Councillor Wells?
Thank you. And staying with Mr. Lee, I have some questions. There was some reports that were passed on to you in regards to damage being done to Brookfield Road toward Forks Road from a hauler hauling dirt to a location on Forks Road. Can you tell me when and if that road, Brookfield Road, is going to be repaired?
Through Mr. Mayor to Councillor Wells. I know that Bylaw had reached out to the property owner and the contractor that was involved. I don't know what the final outcome of their discussions were. I can find those out and get back to you personally on that. With regards to the damages to the shoulder, I know that engineering group has looked at those, and they are looking at doing some base repairs in that area along that would be the west shoulder of that section of Brookfield for about 250 meters, I think, is where the damage happened. That being said, they were doing some measurements and some calculations and fitting that into our base repair works this year.
Councillor?
Great. I look forward to that, Chris. And if you can just send that to me, that'd be great.
Will do.
One other thing, Chris, I've been having some residents asking when the roadsides are going to be mowed. If you have a schedule for mowing like you did with the ditching, and that would be great. That way there I can tell them as soon as they call or email me and let them know.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Wells. Actually, the contractor is due in the week of the 15th of June for his first cut. And he will come in with multiple pieces of equipment and should complete the entire rural area in about a week and a half. The next time they come in, he'll be in mid-September, and it'll be the same format again. So right now, they're scheduled to come in Monday the 15th. As long as things aren't pouring down rain or whatever, they probably will show up even with the rain. And it'll take them about 8 to 9 days at the max to complete the entire rural area.
Councillor?
Excellent. Thank you. One last thing, Chris, before you go. This is in regards to the garbage containers on Pleasant Beach Road and the large garbage enclosure that's there. There have been some complaints about that being overloaded and no garbage cans on the beach. Is there anything that you can do in regards to that?
To you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Wells. I can get staff to put some more portable containers along the entranceway to Pleasant Beach, where just past the parking. As regards to the enclosed container, if there's an issue there with that, we'll communicate that with the region. What they do is they'll come in and they do the pickup that's excessive to what their normal collection parameters are, and then they bill us back for any of those extras. But that's a much more cost effective than it is for us to send people out and try to put it in our system. So they just do it on an extra pickup with the regional collection people.
Councillor Wells?
Okay, thanks, Chris. One last item, and this would be for Dan Aquilino. This is a follow-up with regards to Humberston Speedway. That one of the issues that have been raised is regards to their compliance with the COVID restrictions. I was just wondering if anybody from bylaw or from the city has gone out to confirm or met with them to confirm they will be in compliance for this Saturday's event. So if Dan or someone could let me know on that one.
CAO?
Sure. Through your worship to Councillor Wells, we did contact Public Health from the region about this. They told us that they would give us advice before Saturday on the compliance. This is Humberston, right?
Yes.
The compliance of the with the precautions that they had in place. I don't know if our bylaw officers, which have been responding on a complaint basis and distributing information, you know, sort of would have the expertise for the racing groups, because there are 60 teams of 5 people, if I recall those numbers correctly. We were kind of waiting at the staff level here for some kind of a sign off from Public Health. To the best of my knowledge, unless it went directly to the mayor's office, that has not yet arrived. I do want to expand a little bit on this answer and just say, I know council is generally aware of this, but for the viewing public, we are not putting restrictions in place. We are evaluating the restrictions that store owners or event operators like Humberston are putting in place and making recommendations for improvement and so on. So we won't issue them an order, and the council member that didn't suggest we would. We won't tell them what their precautions must be. We will evaluate their precautions. So in lieu of any information from Public Health, maybe the director of planning could have bylaw staff contact public health tomorrow and see if there is any evaluation taking place from the regional level.
Mr. Aquilina?
Yep, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you to all of council. I did talk to bylaw enforcement today, and they said the province, it has allowed them to be open. They followed up and said that if there's any enforcement, they will team up with the Niagara Regional Police to enforce the COVID matters.
Councillor Wells?
That's fine. I know they're allowed to open, but they are allowed to open with the restrictions of compliance with COVID. The concern is, if they host the event, run the event, and they have not been in compliance, then sort of, to say it in word 4, the horse is out of the barn. So it's just trying to be proactive on it.
Thank you, Councillor. Mr. Aquilina, can we have staff get a hold of public health tomorrow to confirm if they've actually spoken with the owners of Humberston Speedway and if they've helped them with their guidelines on presenting their race on Saturday properly? Can we have that done tomorrow?
Absolutely, Mr. Mayor. I will do that after the meeting concludes.
Thank you. And then we'll get back to council on that. We'll have Mr. Aquilina's staff email council with what they've heard. Is that all right, Councillor Wells?
Thank you, Your Worship. That's great.
Good. Thank you. Okay. Councillor items are over. Now we are under consideration of bylaws. Madam Clerk, are there any bylaws this evening?
There are 5 bylaws this evening. The stop sign amendment for Stanley Street has been removed, so there's renumbering. That is 6785-34-20 to 6789-38-20.
Okay. And we have been asked about bylaw 67883720 to be drawn out for a recorded vote, correct?
I'll do a recorded vote at this time regarding bylaw 6788-37-20 at the request of Councillor Baggio. I will be calling each councillor's name. When you hear your name, please answer yay or nay, and then I will read the result at the end.
Can I get a mover and a seconder for that bylaw? Councillor Wells, Councillor Kalaliff, and Councillor Bodner, Councillor Beauregard both have conflicts on this, correct? Which have already been noted?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
So this is a recorded vote on the bylaw. Councillor Danch?
Sorry, I'm looking at, what's the number of that bylaw we're considering?
It's been renumbered. If you can give them the old number and then the new number.
So the number on the agenda is 6789-38-20, but because bylaw 6787-36-20 was removed from the agenda, the renumbering of the open air burning bylaw is 6788-37-20.
Fine, thank you.
Okay. All right, so this is for a recorded vote. Oh, we have Councillor Baggio's face back. All right.
Yes.
Okay. You're all set?
Yeah, so Councillor Baggio,
No.
Councillor Bruno,
Yes.
Councillor Danch,
Yes.
Councillor Desmarais,
No.
Councillor Kalaliff,
Yes.
Councillor Wells,
Yay.
Mayor Steele.
Yes.
So the total is 5 in favor and 2 against, and the motion passes.
Thank you. And for the remainder of the bylaws, And there are no conflicts with those, correct? I have Councillor Desmarais moving those and Councillor Bruno. They'll be done in block. Any questions? Seeing none, all in favor, raise their hand. That's carried unanimously. And that is the end of our meeting. I move to adjourn, and we thank you for watching tonight's council meeting. The next council meeting will be held on June the 22nd. Please stay safe during this time, and the meeting is now adjourned. Thank you, councillors.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, everyone.